Good morning, everybody. We are going to talk about how the mining and extractive industry has changed over the last decade. I will say a few words, and then Nigel, and then we'll hear from Nimo Bassi, who is leading a movement called Yes to Life, No to Mining. The reason why we're talking about mining and why it's really important to share with you how the game has changed is that over the last decade, we have seen a radical growth in mining. Minerals and metals and fossil fuels are no longer concentrated in small areas. We've mined so much that actually now the exploration budget has increased tenfold over the last decade. And no place is safe, as I'm sure many of us in this room have experienced. For example, 10 years ago, Indigenous territories in the Amazon and parks were protected even from mining. Now, they are absolutely littered with concessions and mining. This is in 5 years. World Heritage Sites, 1 in 4 in Africa, are threatened and impacted by mining. The second point I want to make is not only is no place safe from mining, but the scale of destruction is horrendous because of the toxification and the technology used. The iconic fracking, mountaintop removal, tar sands are but examples of the new trend in mining. This literally is ecocide on a scale that we have never known in human history and Earth history before. And so we see that the legacy is huge industrial wastelands for generations to come. This obviously has to stop. And the generation of us living now will be responsible for making this stop. The first thing that I think is really important for us to recognize is minerals and metals can be reused if we use them in a proper way. We do not need to continue digging the earth. We need to use what we have already dug responsibly. So it's not necessary to carry on mining. Fossil fuels, as we know from the climate information we had last month, has to stop. Our addiction has to stop. But, of course, mineral and metal and mining companies and extractive industries are set up to mine. So, of course, it's not in their interest to stop. And this is why something new is needed. And this is what Nigel will talk about now.
Good morning, everybody. Liz and I have been through this so many times, and then this morning I was like kind of going blank about who am I talking to? What are we talking about? So I'm going to start off by recognizing that each of you out there is also a living being, a sacred being, that the world made you come into this conference in this place for a specific reason. So I am speaking directly to you in our duty at this point in time. I think to be very clear, all of us know that we're losing this battle, that this is not going well. There has been some tremendous successes. We've seen enormous empowerment by Indigenous peoples, getting the declaration passed, Wayne's stories of negotiating and protecting around industry in their traditional territories. But overall, the picture is not good. And I know that when you wake up in the morning, there are days when you're wondering, what am I doing? Was this really the right thing? All those other people at school, they went into industry and they're making lots of money. But somewhere there's something inside us that tells us that we do have a duty to the planet, both to our ancestors and to the future generations, and that everything is pivotal on what we do right now. So at the moment, what I'm saying to you is we have to act more wisely, more astutely about the challenges we face. Within those challenges, if you look at the IUCN's report from 2012 on the World Heritage Sites, all the policy instruments are in place already. The problem is that the states are not upholding their side of the deal. That UNESCO and the multilateral system is unable to police the agreements that we make, so there's no compliance, there's no policing of the compliance. And the sector, the mining sector itself is not going to hold its own standards up if it feels it's losing competitive advantage. All over the world, there are custodians of sacred natural sites, sacred mountains, sacred rivers, holy lands, people like Wayne, like other people who are on the podium here, whose duty it is to their own species, to the biodiversity of their territory. They must fight. They must do this. It's their duty to do it. But it's actually a collective human duty. And if the state system is not working, and if the multilateral system is unable to deliver, it means that we have misanalyzed what is the nature of the power dynamics, and we have to reconfigure that. So the reconfiguration has to be a greater solidarity between the custodians, between the movements of peoples, those who are the duty bearers, and those who are the carriers of the science, the influence, the political understanding. We have to work together. The state is not what it was 50 years ago. In Africa, we know that our governments are very closely aligned to needing the resources they're going to get from their agreements with the mining companies, with the petroleum companies, with foreign investors. We cannot be sure that the state represents the interests of its peoples or the generations that will come. I understand what that's about. It's not about judging them about that, but it's about who is going to be responsible for defending the earth so that there is an earth for the future generations. So in this dialogue that we've set up here, we've tried to bring together a series of different constituencies, and you are invited to join that conversation as people who represent your peoples, who represent specific technical skills. We've got an event that's going to deal with the defense of World Heritage Sites against mining and the hydrocarbon industry, protected areas around the world, so those formal structures, iconic, politically recognized, but then also the sacred natural sites, which are often invisible to the world, sometimes which have to be invisible to the world, and indigenous peoples' territories. How do we create an alliance that's going to be more effective at the defense of the planet in working together, that we are able to turn around the dynamics? We created those dynamics as a species. It means that we also are the carriers of the solution of that process. So on Tuesday, the 8th of October, at 3 o'clock, we've got a double-barreled workshop session. We invite you to come to look at the practical side of what is the impact of the mining industry, how are we responding, how are people at grassroots responding, but how are those of us who have to work at the multilateral level responding? How do we stitch together an effective strategy that is going to actually have some traction? There's also a motion in front of this conference. We're going to invite you to look at bringing together the idea of all the different types of spaces that we're trying to protect: sacred natural sites, indigenous territories, World Heritage Sites, and protected areas, that alliance be the announcement that comes out of WILD10, that there is that solidarity between humans, that we're going to defend the earth and we're going to do it effectively. And also to draw your attention to the IUCN World Parks Congress. Clearly, inside the World Commission on Protected Areas, there is a deep concern about the impact of mining and extractive industries in the protected area sector, a feeling that we are losing traction, and we are expecting this to be a major issue on the table in Sydney in November next year. There's a special stream that deals with, Stream 5, that deals with development and economic interests, so it's a chance to brainstorm a bit here about what you need to say there, what needs to happen there. But also, part of my duty is we're trying to stitch together throughout the Congress next year what we've called the new social compact, about letting go of some of our fixed ideas of who we are and what we're responsible for, and a greater discovery of each other, that we've got to get out of our comfort zone, out of our familiar zone. And just as people leave their territories to come to these conferences, so we must journey across each other's boundaries, rediscover each other's humanity, rediscover each other's sacredness, that we put into motion our karmic responsibility to defend the earth through a wise and effective manner. So that's our invitation to you, to join us for that dialogue, to bring your particular expertise and to help us craft a way forward. And with that, we're going to invite our techno people to bring us a voice out of Nigeria from a custodian community. Thank you.
I bring you greetings from Africa, and I salute you for gathering at this very important moment to discuss issues related to our planet and sustainability. It has become very clear that the actions of mankind, of humanity, has stretched the limits of Mother Earth, and it's time to call a halt to these mindless actions that threatens the future of not just humanity, but of all species on planet Earth. The harm that's been done, a lot of that harm has come through irresponsible mining. And in the far past, mining was mainly done for utilitarian purposes, to produce things that were very essential for living. But today, a whole lot of mining, for example, of gold, is done so that the gold can be placed in vaults, in banks, and in other secured storehouses, so that people can accumulate value in gold, in minerals, and also to feed speculations. Because of the drive for profit and the lack of care for the planet or the people, transnational mining corporations and other mining companies have engaged continuously in reckless extraction, destroying water bodies, destroying forests, destroying farmlands, displacing communities, and creating refugees even in territories owned by people who have been invaded without their prior informed consent. In my experience with mining communities that are resisting mining, one of the things I've found communities ask for is simply dialogue with those who would love to take the resources that they have. And usually, rather than having consultations and open, popular conversations with the people who are directly in the line of fire of corporate claws and talons and rigs, which are more like gallows, we find that rather than having this conversation, the mining corporations who have pocketed governments and politicians continue to utilize military might to silence communities, to kill defenders of patrimony and territories. And it's time for us as peoples around the world to stand together in solidarity and declare very loud and clear that enough is enough. So mining corporations are guilty of ecocide, and we have to call it what it is. We cannot allow a development or production system that doesn't care about people to continue to define the path to the future. That the kind of impacts that mining has pushed upon people and communities, these impacts are clearly immoral, unacceptable, and there are things that can be avoided. Mining is against life. The race for what is left of minerals has to be truncated and halted if we are ever going to hope to retain life and protect Mother Earth, if we hope to have a future where our children and children's children can look around and see a semblance of things that are natural and not things that are plastic, artificial, or generated from mining pits around the world. Wherever mining pits have been opened, you can be sure that those communities next to those mining pits don't benefit from the process of the mines. They may have tokens given to them, but there's nothing compared to what they lose. Their patrimony, their livelihood, their lands, their water bodies, and the right to safe environment to live in, the pollution in the air that they are now forced to breathe. So when we say yes to life and no to mining, we are talking not only about the survival of humanity, but the survival of the planet. I've visited many communities where mines are being carried out in Ghana, in Kono, in Sierra Leone, in South Africa, where mines, some coal mines, for example, have been abandoned for 50 years, and they're just more or less burning like hell, fires burning in the caverns of abandoned mines and sinkholes, swallowing buildings and swallowing people. We just look everywhere. It's go beyond, if we go beyond solid minerals and look at the more liquid or semi-liquid minerals, like the tar sandpits of Canada, like the oil fields of Nigeria, the oil fields of Latin America, the threats to sink rigs in the Yasuni and Ecuador. When you look at all this, you agree with me that more than ever before, we are facing a planetary emergency. There is no way that we can continue in this way. The energy required in mining can better be used to do other productive things. We've mined enough already. It's time not just to keep on digging, We can't get out of the crisis by digging deeper into the hole. It's time to use what we have in a responsible way. It is time to close the mine pits and begin a process of remediation. If we are talking about creation of jobs, the restoration of degraded lands will provide enough jobs. And we have enough brains and enough ideas to move into areas that respect the planet, that respect humanity, that is humble enough to recognize that we're not the only living beings on planet Earth. And even the things we call inanimate and non-living is just, we're calling them non-living based on the limitation of our understanding about what is life. And so we're saying very clearly, yes to life, no to mining. I'm happy you gave me this time to send this video message, and I thank you for paying attention to what I've had to say. I've spoken it from my heart. It's so painful to see what mining is doing to the planet and to people and communities. And I wish you very happy deliberations